Our second standing pole posture was a simple flat on double palms forward stance, and we were using a very basic visualization of imagining our hands resting on a boulder and the boulder just rolling towards us and we were taking the weight. So that's a single vector exercise, just imagining that lateral force forwards or backwards, but it's frozen in a moment within the standing pole posture. And now we want to unfreeze it. We want to take that single vector and transform it into movement along the same vectorial line, so forwards and backwards. And we'll keep the same visualization because it's quite useful, but we'll just modify it a tiny little bit, because we always want to kill two or more birds with one stone if we possibly can. So in this case, as well as doing the basic exercise, we want to also think about some of the more sophisticated uses of the structure of intent. And what that means in this case is just modifying the visualization slightly depending on whether we're pushing out or feeling the weight of the boulder moving in. So when we're pushing out, we'll just imagine that we're pushing the boulder backwards, and that's the first visualization that we're going to use because we're just going to focus on the upper body. We imagine that we are pushing the boulder out. It's not totally clear from the video that I am pushing forwards and backwards, but I didn't do any side-on shots, but I am pushing forwards and backwards. So we imagine pushing the boulder out, and again, we focus on maintaining a completely balanced posture for this exercise. And remember that one of the key things that we're doing here is creating these intentional arcs within a completely balanced posture. So just through the use of our intent, we're activating certain parts of our body. And that's the parts of our body that are involved specifically with load bearing, whether that be pushing, i.e. guiding force, or whether that be striking. And in this case, the intentional arc that we use or create while we're pushing out is around the inside of the arms, the biceps, and across the chest. So it's along the inside line of our arms, if you like. But we don't want to use the same visualization as we move our arms backwards. So you can imagine that if we visualized that the boulder was rolling backwards towards us, and we just brace and take the weight and then move our arms back, that's a perfectly fine visualization, but it will keep the intentional arc in the same space. If you imagine genuinely taking the weight of something and feeling, well, what would the muscles be that I would use to hold this weight? It would be that intentional arc along the inside of your body. Instead, we want to shift the location of the intentional arc. So we want to experience that, practice it, and understand conceptually that we can do this. And the reason that we want that is, for example, if you're doing push hands or guard engage or something like that, you need to be able to rapidly shift where the intentional arc is. In fact, you need to be able to do it intuitively and instantaneously. But practicing it like this is the shortcut. It takes a lot less time than just trying to force the body to do it on the fly with actual weights, taking weights. It takes a lot longer to do it that way, and also we save a lot of wear and tear on the body practicing it from the absolute granular level up. Never forget that actually when we do push hands, that's a kind of weight training. So all these people who say, well, we don't do weight training in Yiquan, well, that's exactly what push hands is. It's just taking the same movements and bringing it into load-bearing exercises. But we begin like this. So in any case, the visualization that we want to use this time as we move our arms back, well, you can think either that your hands are glued to the boulder and that you're pulling it back, or you can imagine that your hands are chained to the boulder, or that there's a rope going round the boulder and then it's attached to your wrists. Either way, what we want to do is change the sense of movement so that we're dragging the boulder back. It isn't rolling towards us, we're dragging it towards us. And just with that one change of visualization, we shift where the intentional arc is from around the chest and the inside of the arms to around the back, the shoulders, the outside of the arms and the triceps. And this is, again, this amazing phenomenon of the liminal intersection between the mental and the physical, or recognizing that that difference doesn't really exist. So we're deconstructing that socially created difference between those two. And if you practice this kind of exercise quite intensively over a reasonable period of time, let's say an hour or something like that, exercises like this, you will ache, you will really feel the intensity of the exercise. But critically, if you do it actually with load bearing straight away, it just completely obliterates any sense of the fine granular movement, and that's what we need to be able to reprogram the intent. So remember that we're working with this quite unusual paradigm where we're thinking about physical movement as being the hack that allows us to get back into the programming, what we call our intent, but the socially constructed programming of physical movement. And we use physical movement itself as like a backdoor hack to get into that programming and just to start to rewrite it. Okay, so let's crack on with the first exercise. We're going to use that visualization. All we're going to do is push forwards and backwards. Remember, maintain that completely balanced posture. Don't skew it from the quad axis or from the spine or vertical axis. Just try and keep everything completely balanced and breathe naturally, and we'll do it 8 times. Next, I demonstrate how I would normally do the posture, which is using what we call dynamic weightedness in Yiquan. That is shifting dynamically and rapidly between single and double weightedness using the contexts of open, close, rise and sink. And I've explained that in more detail in the previous video. So here I just wanted to mention that this isn't an idea that's invented in Yiquan. All Chen Tai Chi forms, for example, begin like this. So if you watch someone like Chen Zhenglei, the first movement, the opening movement, he will always be shifting dynamically left and right as he uses rise and then sink. And it's no coincidence that that's done in the first posture. For one thing, it sets the context of the form itself in Tai Chi, that you're going to use the dynamic shifting between single and double weightedness within the 4 contexts. But it also emphasizes the key difference between Tai Chi Chuan and particularly Shaolin Chuan. In Shaolin Chuan, the use of single and double weightedness is highly mechanical. So, for example, the shift from horse stance and punch to bow stance and punch is a shift from double weightedness into single weightedness. And what differentiates those arts that develop in what we've called the Neijia Revolution from previous generations of Wushu is a much more dynamic use of single and double weightedness. In our third exercise, again, we return to completely balanced movements, but this time we want to start engaging more of our overall structure. And what we're going to do is add in another intentional arc, this time one that covers the whole body from the feet through to the head. And the way that we're going to do this is to use the quad axis. So as we push forwards, we want to feel like the heels of our feet are digging into the ground, pushing backwards. And we want to use our intention, not our actual physical movement, but our intention to create an intentional arc that begins or has its center in our quad axis. It's rooted at the heels, and from there we feel like we're pushing forwards from the quad into the overall posture, which is pushing into the boulder, pushing it away from us. So as well as the intentional arc across our arms, we've got an intentional arc that runs all the way along the front of our body. Now there's something a little bit more difficult here that we need to do, and that is to feel like we're engaging the muscles and sinews, bones and alignment along the backs of our legs, not along the front of our legs. So intentional arcs, remember, exist within an overall structure. The whole of our body is involved in using unified force. The intentional arc is just created through the use of our intent within that overall structure. It's actually the backs of our legs that would provide the leverage for the quad axis to push forwards. But what you'll probably find is, as well as using the backs of your legs, you start engaging the front of your thigh muscles, and we don't want to do that. The engagement in your thigh muscles should remain at exactly the same level as if you were doing standing pole. We don't want to start tensing those muscles. It doesn't feed into the posture at all. It's just that our intent, usually at this stage, isn't quite sophisticated enough to pick out and highlight and activate the muscles and sinews along the backs of the leg without also activating the muscles and sinews and so on the front of the leg. According to Wang Xiangjai's student Yiquan, the parts of our cerebral cortex that are associated with using our legs are a lot less developed than those that are associated with using our hands, because we use our hands a lot more or for much more detailed work. So we need to build that, because at first our intent just connects to that part of our body, but the body responds just like a whole area, front of the leg, back of the leg. So we've got to work on isolating that to improve our overall movement. And that's a good example of seeing why this kind of movement, this kind of training is incredibly useful in building overall skill level. You could, of course, try and do this with actually pushing something and just trying not to use the front part or unnecessary parts of your leg, but it's much easier to do it this way, and it's much less wear and tear on the body, and actually it's much quicker to develop it like this. So for the push out, we're going to have actually 3 intentional arcs when we think about it now. So one is across the top of the body with the arms. The second is from the head down to approximately the middle of the front of the thigh, and then there's another intentional arc from the middle of the back of the thigh down to the feet. So it's kind of an S shape with the body, and this is the way that intentional arcs work. They are an extension of the principle of triangles, as Wang Xiangjai explains it. And holding all those things together within our intent and experiencing them physically is going to be quite challenging, but that's the whole point of training. Next, we're going to change. The visualization will be dragging the boulder backwards. And just as the intentional arc shifts from the front of the arms to the back and the back of the arms, so other things are going to reverse in our posture. Our feet, for example, are going to change from pushing backwards with the heels to feeling like they could almost be dragged forwards. And the point of leverage at our quad is obviously going to shift from the front round to the back. And then finally, the feeling in our legs is going to swap round as well. So we'll now feel an intensity on the front of our thighs rather than on the back. And just like before, actually it's a little bit easier this way round, just because of the way we normally move and the way we normally use our legs. So those muscles on the front of our thigh, we tend to have a stronger connection with or between our intents and those muscles. But nevertheless, you will find unnecessary musculature getting involved on the backs of your legs, and you've got to use visualization, and you've got to use your will and the direction of your intent and your attention to that point to just relax and let go of that unnecessary tension. Okay, again, we're going to do it 8 times, so let's give it a go. For our final exercise in this set, we return again to completely balanced movements, and this time we shift where the intentional arc is to either left hand and left leg or right hand and right leg, and we just shift from one to the other as we do the exercise. And this exercise is based on the dynamic of what you actually do when you have to push when you're facing flat on. So most people would just try and lean all their weight forward, which makes you very vulnerable. So the way to actually push from a flat on position in Yiquan is to skew the posture to the side, so you lean to the side. And this shifts the posture from double weightedness to single weightedness. And remember, Wang Xiangjai says, avoid the sin of double weightedness at all costs. And Wang Xiangjai's student Yao Zongzun also emphasises that Wang Xiangjai will point out on multiple occasions that even if you push with both palms, one palm has always got to be dominant, or one side of the body has always got to be dominant to make it single weighted. This is how you do it in this case. And you can feel that straight away when you practice actually pushing with force on a punch bag or actually pushing a person, that this is how it functions. The only other technical thing to note is that, as with most postures, the leg that takes the weight isn't the leg that the posture is set on, or more accurately we should say the dominant set, because both legs set the posture, but one is always more dominant than the other because it's single weighted rather than double weighted. So for example, with a left hand jab, the right leg takes most of the weight, but the intentional arc is down to the front leg because it's the front leg that sets the posture, i.e. it is the front leg that primarily forms the intentional arc that allows force to be transmitted to the hip point. And however abstract that is conceptually, when you actually hit a punch bag or a person, you can feel that immediately. Well, you can when you do it right. In this case, with the double palm push forwards, we're not going to actually lean again. It's just going to create that sense. We're going to create that intentional arc just in our intent within a completely balanced posture. But if we were to do it and actually release force and to lean over to one side, the side that we're not leaning towards would be the dominant side. So just like with a jab, the back leg is taking the weight. As we lean over to the side in a flat double push, one leg is taking the weight, the other side is setting the posture. And just like a jab, because this is effectively a lead hand technique, the lead leg sets the posture. So for this exercise, we want to visualize the intentional arc from one hand down to the foot on the same side. We don't want to actually skew the posture to the side. We just want to create that sensation in our intent. Other than that, our visualization can be exactly the same, and then we switch to the other hand. And this kind of training is critically important for training the structure of intent so that we can generate and transmit force effectively in a stressful situation. As per usual, we'll do it 8 times, so let's give it a go.